The dress code, or limitations in attire followed by Muslim men and women. Islamic teachings regarding attire represent a nuanced intersection of divine guidance, juridical interpretation, and cultural expression. While often conflated with the rigid strictures of Shariah law or the varying customs of Muslim-majority societies, the Islamic dress code fundamentally constitutes a set of religious limitations, defining what is permissible and impermissible for believers seeking to embody modesty and piety. These prescriptions transcend cultural particularities, establishing universal parameters for Muslim men and women, even as their application manifests differently across diverse civilizational contexts. At the core of Islamic sartorial requirements lies the concept of awrah, Aurut, set in common subcontinental language, referring to those parts of the body that must remain concealed from public view. For men, the minimum obligatory coverage extends from the navel to the knees, a definition agreed upon by the majority of Islamic jurists. This represents the absolute baseline for valid prayer and public appearance. Anything less renders the individual religiously non-compliant. However, the authentic Sunnah encourages men to exceed this minimum, recommending coverage of the shoulders and upper body as a mark of dignity and humility before the divine. Beyond mere coverage, male attire must adhere to qualitative restrictions. Garments must be loose-fitting rather than form-fitting, thick enough to prevent transparency, and devoid of ostentatious display. Men are specifically prohibited from wearing natural silk or gold adornments, materials classified in Islamic jurisprudence as feminine adornments unsuitable for male dignity. Additionally, men must avoid clothing that specifically imitates religious vestments of other faiths or that blurs gender distinctions, as maintaining clear differentiation between masculine and feminine presentation serves the broader Islamic objective of preserving social morality and identity. For women, the minimum requirements are more comprehensive, reflecting the Quranic injunctions and prophetic traditions regarding feminine modesty. The consensus of classical scholarship holds that a woman must cover her entire body in the presence of non-mahram men, those with whom marriage is permissible, with the exception of her face and hands. This derives from the Quranic command for believing women to draw their veils over their bosoms, and not display their adornment except to specified close relatives. The hair and neck, consequently, constitute essential components of the female awrah that must be concealed. In Indian subcontinent the awrah or the words Aurut is used to indicate females in general. Like male attire, women's clothing must be loose and opaque, designed to obscure rather than accentuate the bodily form. The prohibition against displaying beauty and ornaments extends beyond physical coverage to encompass behavioral modesty, such as avoiding deliberate movements intended to draw attention to concealed adornments. However, within these minimum parameters exists considerable scholarly debate regarding the face and hands. While the majority opinion treats the face and hands as exempt from mandatory covering, significant minority positions, particularly within certain traditionalist schools, argue for the desirability or even obligation of covering the face, niqab, when there exists any possibility of lustful gaze or fitna, social discord. This divergence illustrates that even within defined religious limitations, interpretive flexibility exists, allowing for contextual application based on social circumstances and individual spiritual aspirations. Beyond these foundational religious requirements, numerous Muslim-majority societies have developed sartorial practices that, while culturally pervasive, exceed the minimum divine injunctions and have effectively become Islamic social culture. For Arab populations, the abaya, a loose, full-length robe, has become synonymous with feminine modesty, though it represents regional cultural expression rather than universal religious mandate. Similarly, the niqab and burqa, prevalent in parts of the Arabian Peninsula and South Asia respectively, reflect cultural interpretations of modesty that extend beyond the baseline requirements. For men, the white thobe or dishdasha of the Gulf states, the shalwar kameez of South Asia, and the jalaba of North Africa represent culturally specific garments that fulfill religious requirements while expressing ethnic identity. These cultural accretions often acquire such widespread acceptance that they become indistinguishable from religious obligation in the popular imagination. In many societies, a woman wearing merely a headscarf with modest Western clothing might face social censure despite meeting the minimum religious requirements, while the abaya is treated as inherently more pious. Conversely, men wearing pants and shirts that adequately cover the awrah might be viewed as less religiously committed than those wearing traditional robes, even though both satisfy the divine injunction. This phenomenon demonstrates how social culture, once established, develops its own normative force distinct from jurisprudential rulings. The distinction between religious limitation and cultural practice remains crucial for understanding the diversity of Muslim expression globally. A Muslim woman in Indonesia might wear a colorful kebaya with a headscarf, while her counterpart in Iran wears a manto and chador, and another in Senegal dons vibrant traditional wraps, all fulfilling the same religious obligations while expressing distinct cultural identities. Similarly, Muslim men in Bosnia, Nigeria, and Malaysia might dress in completely different traditional attires while adhering to identical principles of coverage and modesty. Ultimately, the Islamic dress code establishes non-negotiable boundaries of modesty while permitting vast cultural creativity within those bounds. The minimum requirements, covering the awrah, ensuring looseness and opacity, avoiding prohibited materials and imitative practices, constitute the religious foundation upon which Muslim communities have constructed diverse sartorial traditions. Recognizing this distinction allows believers to fulfill their spiritual obligations authentically while respecting the legitimate cultural diversity that enriches the global Muslim community, ensuring that divine worship remains distinct from cultural conformity, even as the two harmoniously coexist in the lived experience of faith.